ladies, gentlemen, and murder fang to that 6+++ show. I am your host, Tom, and it's very warm in England. It's a hot place right now, so I'm feeling pretty warm. I'm joined with three very warm gentlemen who are also dying in the heat. There's a lot of wife beaters out today, more than would typically be seen in this team. Maybe we need 6++ wife beaters. We are the 40k team of 6++, as well, you know, and we are here to talk all things 40k. Tonight we're going to be talking about adapting to a new meta. This is something that's going on. We've got new rules. We've had a very ambitious update to the game. And obviously, all our chats are abuzz with people trying to figure out what the hell they do now and where they go next. So we're going to share some wisdoms about how you do that, because this is not our first rodeo. We have been through many a shift in this silly old game, and we'll be through many more before the end. Before we do that, we're going to catch up with the team, and then we're going to do a little bit of a plus roundup, because we are very good at self-promotion, possibly the best. So I'm going to introduce you to our casted players, starting where I like to start with my dear leader, Chris. Chris, how are you?
It's been a day, Thomas.
Has it been a day?
It's been a day. I was up bright and early. Had the most important day of the year, which was, as we all know, is Sports Day.
Oh, what a day!
I was in at school prepping that, and then we had a great time in the morning whilst also melting. And so it's been tiring. So it's nice here. We've just had a team meeting with a lot of the crew from 6++. Loads of us got together, chatted about our plans for the next few months, the sorts of things we want to be working on, developing as a channel, as a team, and that sort of thing. So very exciting.
Yeah.
I'll do what all those content creators say. Watch this space, because we've got some really exciting ideas, and maybe some of those will come to fruition. But no, we're always trying to build
at least.
Exactly. So, but no, it's always good to kind of like check in with everyone and get those ideas being fired around, and hopefully people like what's coming, really. But yeah, other than that, I am good, thank you.
Wonderful, very good to hear. I am also joined today by Jack. Jack, how are you doing?
Doing wonderfully, Tom. I'm doing absolutely fantastically. I'm definitely not dying in the heat. I'm not suffering, cursing my Irish and Scottish ancestors for their audacity to live in a cold country and give me these genes. Certainly not.
Very nice. And have you done any 40k or hobbying of late?
I've been doing a lot of list writing, a lot of thinking about the game, a bit of TTS here and there. I've for some reason I've taken on two ridiculous painting projects at the same time. I'm repainting my entire Tau army, which I've been sort of slowly working towards, and I am also painting a GSC army, which I am slowly working towards. So I'm kind of just flipping between those two projects, and eventually one of them will be done and I can rest. But just my painting ADHD is just getting the better of me.
It can lead you around a real circle sometimes, but yeah, I like your scheme. I'm excited. And I don't know what your new tower scheme is. I'm excited to see what that is as well. I'm also joined tonight by the lovely Rob Kimpton, who should be used to this weather, but doesn't seem to be. Rob, how are you doing?
I'm not used to this weather after living here for 5 years. You know what, though? I'm really well. I spent 4 days in the sun outside with friends. I had some time off, and I actually feel alive again. So it's great. The sun does amazing things to you.
Really does. Really, really does. It's a good time to get outside. So why are we doing this? Who knows? that's where we're at, though. So we'll persevere.
I'll burn so hard within moments.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. All right, I'm going to shout out a couple of people in the chat, because Sean Catewell is in. He says, yes, I'm very stressed to this. I assume that means adaptation. I assume adaptation is what's got Sean Catewell stressed. Pickalax is also in, and Luke Harris is in. Hello, everybody. Really, really nice to see you. Right, okay, Chris, take it away with the Plus Roundup, and once you're done, I'll do a little shout out to our king of the ping that's been going on as well.
Nice. So, if you follow us, you'll know that we've actually been hammering out the content because something happened last week. And it turns out that when there's a change in the meta, in the world of rules and all that sort of thing, all the content creators want to do new things. So what have we been doing? Well, Scrivo opened up by telling you, dear beloved Dark Angel fans, what the line can now do. Spoiler alert, it's so good that it's got 5,000 views.
Absolutely amazing. You won't believe it.
Yeah,
enemies of the Dark Angels hate this one simple trick.
So if you have any interest in, because obviously Marine players are always kind of flip flopping around their kind of different what they want to main at the moment, and it might well be it's time for the Dark Angels to make a bit of a reappearance because it's not been, it's been so long since they were last everywhere 50 Terminators, so it's time for Dark Angels to come back and be good again, right?
Yeah,
With Terminators, so that's fun. So
feel like-
definitely check that out.
Sorry, I played the game for 2 years, and I feel like 3/4 of that has been a Dark Angels meta.
So-
So it's just
they're
gonna be a
almost
Dark
always
Angels
too
meta.
good, and when they're not too good, they're screaming their heads off, and then back we go again.
Yeah, here we go again. Let's go.
Yeah.
But if Dark Angels aren't your fancy, what about Tactical Marines? Because our very own Ed Watts recently came third at UKTC Bristol Super Major with
Amazing,
40 Tactical Marines. So, and also some other things, but mainly 40 Tactical Marines in his Black Templar Horde. So definitely check that one out. He goes through his whole list, how he plays it, and then goes through all the games, all in 20 minutes. I didn't know that was possible. So fair play. Scrivo's then talking about orcs and kind of the updates with there. We've got No Eye in Team with Vic. Tom, do you want to?
Yeah, so this is like every time I'm doing a player interview for the Team England sort of coverage, I'm also getting them to do a little 15-minute video talking about like some aspects of teams play they're particularly passionate about, right? So in this instance, Vic talks about blunting, so the role of reducing and mitigating big threats in the game at a moment in time, and the kind of the skill set you need to be a player who can go into the scariest things in the game and take points off them and do massive work for your team. So it's a really interesting niche. It's one Vic himself's fairly infamous for, although he's also infamous for counter 20-0ing meta menaces. So whatever. He's a quite an exceptional example, but it's a really interesting video. And it's very interesting actually, I think, to hear the kind of team's process and thinking from obviously a big member of Ignite as well. I think it's a really good video for that.
Yeah, so if you're any interest in teams, definitely be checking out the No Eye in Team series as more and more stuff comes out.
Yep.
We've got some data slate hot takes from Mr. Ed Fawcett. He's looking at Necrons and Custodes.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, one army got buffed, one army got taken down. And so he talks about kind of like the way you can look to build those lists and play that army coming up in the future. In terms of live stuff, obviously we had a brand new exciting event last Friday. Edwards has come up with Friday Night Fight series, which is going to be most Fridays. It's a TTS live streamed game, and Ed and I did the very first one. So if you want to watch Grey Knights, one of the top armies in the meta, versus Eldari, who used to be top army in the meta, these days, jury's out, who knows, in a game that goes down to literally the last dice roll, then
it's amazing.
Then check that out. But also,
and Karandras is in there, guys.
Karandras
Freaking Karandras is in there.
Jane Czar's in there.
Yeah, there's all sorts of nonsense. It's great.
Absolute madness. And yeah, we kind of do it as like a coaching game. So we're constantly talking about our ideas and our plans. And I think it's the sort of thing that, have it on in the background whilst you're painting. And I think you will enjoy the experience for sure. And then, of course, we have our fortnightly show, Bug Watch. And Davey and JP talk all about Vanguard Onslaught. Okay, all the Tyranid players are really excited about Vanguard Onslaught at the moment, aren't they?
They are.
So find out why. And if you have any interest in Tyranids, playing Tyranids, or maybe you always lose to Tyranids, or maybe you just like pretty grass, then check out that show because Davey is absolutely smashing it at the moment with all that content. It's really, really high quality. So definitely check that out. So yeah, as you can see, we're producing loads of stuff at the moment. There's loads more to come. We've got more Friday nights. This Friday, do we know? Is it you, Jack?
Sorry, mute myself. Yes, it is me. It's I'm playing the G Steel Cults against a mystery army. I'm not sure what it is yet.
Oh, wonderful. Very exciting.
Nice. So playing new Gene Stealer Cults.
If you want to learn new Gene Stealer Cults, see how they play, taking on something, Ed will concoct something. Then
he seems to be his imagination run wild for these, which I'm here for.
Yeah.
Imagine if it was just the Templar Horde battering someone every week for the rest of the time.
That'd be the dream.
Oh, that'd be ridiculous.
So yeah, we've got that. I've got my data slate for review from Grey Knight's perspective coming out this week.
Amazing.
But yeah, there's just so much stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, Drakari, Rob and I recorded last night. I recorded CSM today. We're trying to get in depth on as many of the armies as we can and take you through the good, bad, and the ugly. There's just going to be tons of stuff for the next few weeks.
Yeah, so it's just going to be that consistent thing, and we're like only just over 100 subscribers away from hitting 5,000.
Which was our goal for the year.
Yeah, our goal for the year was 5,000 to get 2,000 subscribers this year. So thank you very much to everyone who subscribed. And if you're interested in becoming a member, we're up to 25 members now. The more members we have, the more members-only content we're going to produce. We've got more money to do stuff. So please consider that for early access, exclusive videos, and also you could become part of a league if you are.
Could become part of a league.
Member.
So we're gonna shout out Davey, who's been running our King of the Ping in-house league. This is the first time we've ever done this, and it's been a league for our sort of mentees, and also some of the team have all entered this time around. So our plan for the next edition of King of the Ping, which Davey will be announcing in due course, is for this to be anyone who's a member on YouTube can join and get involved in that league. And we had knockout rounds this time, and one of the coolest things was that one of our mentees made it out the pods as well. We had a number of pods, everyone competing and contesting, and shout out to Brain Seller who made it out of their pod. Absolutely brilliant. Our very own Ben Pierce also got out running his not Ben Pierce, what's his surname?
Ben Pritchard.
That's the one, Ben Pritchard. There's too many Ben P's in this hobby, mate. There's at least I know at least 5. It was ridiculous. So well done, Ben Pritchard, smashing it with his Vanguard Ultramarines. Jack absolutely bodied his way through with the GSC, and I speedward my way out of my pod as well. So we've got the semi-finals coming soon, which I think is me and Jack chucking at each other, and Brain Seller versus Ben. So it'll be really fun because I don't know about you, I've just not played this version of the game yet, Jack. So I guess we'll just figure that out and have a go.
Oh, I got one game and I lost in 2 turns. So don't worry, I'm not more practiced than you.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we'll figure that out together, mate. That'll be really good fun. So it's been really good fun. I think the model works really well, and we're super excited to do it in future. So if you're interested, please do consider becoming a member, and you too can get involved in our in-house league next time. We're going to go even bigger, even better, and keep on refining it. And it's all the games by all accounts really fun. Loads of people having a great time, and a lot of violence shed on TTS as well, which is what we want.
Yeah, it's really fun. We do a mix of all the terrain types.
Yeah,
all
we had
the
so good
terrain, all of the sorts of
we had
tournaments.
3 rounds: UKTC, GW, and WTC terrain, and different missions. Like it's really really fun, really fun. So yeah, I think Davey's come up with a really good concept there. Wonderful. All right, and yeah, so as ever, please do hit like and subscribe. Please do leave us a comment. It means the world to us. The support is all really useful, and we're looking at boosting our algorithm, so that all helps us with that as well. Do a few more shout outs and then we'll get into our topic for the week. So we've got Gordy is in as well. Good to see you, Gordy. Sharuni says, I'm late, barely. You're fine. This is the bit people skip on YouTube anyway. You're all right.
Yeah, the one review we've got said, good show, but they talk too much about themselves at the start. And why do podcasts do this? No one cares. So sorry, guys. Deal with it.
I understand it. I'm not going to stop doing it because I like it. It's as simple as that. And yeah, thank you very much, Sharuni. We are really chuffed. As I say, we've had a good year. It's been a really good year on pushing through and pushing forwards. And actually, it's nice to hit that goal so early in the year, and it means we can consolidate and start planning for the future as well. Wonderful. Okay, so we're going to be talking meta adaptation today. This is something we've all done many times. I think we've been hit with a real sort of multiple shake-up this time. Between new rule sets, data slate changes, core rules changes is a real curveball to throw into the mix as well, and points changes as well as some new books landing with Sisters and GSC. That there's a ton of stuff in play right now. And I think, again, what we want to do is open this up to our old hands, our experienced veterans here, and talk about how they navigate a moment like this and the sorts of things that they do to deal with the kind of changes we're up against. And what you, the listener, could be thinking about as you start this process of figuring out is what is essentially a new version of the game, right? Your 10.5 edition, where the change up in the way the game works is drastic enough that this is a big set of changes. So I guess if we start with the headlines and open it up to our players here, what would you say is the single most important thing for you when you're trying to navigate a new set of rules and a new change in the game? What's the most important thing that you always try and do and trying to apply? If we start maybe with you, Chris.
Which is really easy. What you immediately do is go, oh my word, this unit is now 5 points more expensive. I can't take it anymore. And then you immediately look at all the other options and then go, sod this, I'm going to start a new army.
Yes. So
That,
panic, flip the board, knee jerk,
absolutely.
cannonball into something completely different.
I'm always amazed at it happens every time, but like, I'm obviously part of our own WhatsApp group and a huge variety of different Facebook groups and stuff, and you just see it every time, don't you? Like, oh wow, this unit, no, can't take this unit anymore, not an option. You're like, it went up 10 points, mate. Like, if it was good then, it's probably still good at 10 points more. But no, I personally have a very simple start point, and that's I try. And as long as what I've been using has been working reasonably well, I immediately go into all my next few games with as close a list as possible.
Exactly.
So for me, I had a Grey Knights list that I was really happy with. It's not like a blow you away type list, but it's a list that suits me, and I know every game I play, I'm not going to get blown out. I've got a pretty good chance of winning a game with that list. And with the changes, it came to 2,025 points. So I was like, what is the change that I can make to my list, which is is going to affect the general gameplay of that list as much. So that means that then when I come to a brand new set of rules, I can then go, right, I'm now only focusing on the rules. And I played my first game of Pariah on Friday on live stream, and I was there reading the cards. Like,
it was really funny watching you literally encounter a secondary as you draw it. Like, oh, okay.
Read this. What do I need to do? This one's a piece of piss. Oh, great. This one's even easier than extend power lines. Sweet. Cheers, containment. But yeah, and you're not worrying about kind of like, how does my army play? What do I need to be doing with my army? I'm just playing my army like normal and then encountering. And then you know what? Over time, then you can try new things and adapt, etc. But for me, it's just make the most minor changes you can to the list. Learn what the missions and the cards are like.
Yes.
People watch me live being like, what do I do now? And, it's fun. It is fun because obviously we've been playing the same missions for so long, haven't we? It's fun to be like, this is a bit new. But yeah, my advice would be just to start in as close a place as possible, just in the early doors of learning the new how everything's going to go. Really.
Absolutely. How about you, Jack? What's the sort of top tip you'd say for someone trying to adapt to these new circumstances?
So I actually come at it from the complete opposite direction that Chris does. So the last thing I want to do is look at the list that I played in the last data slate and play it again, because at best I'm just going to get burn myself out on running the same list again. That's just me.
Okay. Okay.
No knock if.
Do you like to use it as a sort of complete reset kind of moment? Do you?
Yeah. So to me, particularly in an update this big, where you got a bunch of core rule changes, not just point changes for a couple units. So for me, for example, I'm in a good position where I have two armies that I'm playing at the moment. One which has got a new codex, which is the biggest change you could possibly get, and one which had almost no changes at all. So I sort of have both ends of the spectrum. So for example, on my Tau, for me, looking at it, I don't want to run the same list again. I just want to. I'm like, okay, let's just take everything at baseline. Nothing is off the table, right? I know what's good. Breaches are good, right? Riptides are good. I'm not. These things are good. I don't need to worry about them. I'm looking at stuff that I wouldn't have taken before. Is that an opportunity for me to change stuff up? In the new meta, because things like broadsides got changed, but you can look at things like Vespid. You can look at things like, this is obviously Tau specific, but you can look at things that you wouldn't have looked at all before. And you can be like, well, is there a place now with the new missions, the way actions are done, the way potentially a new meta, if there are new factions coming in, is there a new place for this unit that I had previously disregarded? So I always say to myself, nothing is off the table when it comes to a new version of the game. I never want to say, I know that this unit is bad, so it can't possibly be good because because it points didn't go down. There's always going to be a chance for something to change, and be more viable than it was before.
completely.
So just something that you would have never
I
considered.
think that makes sense. And I think what's interesting is I don't actually think those two viewpoints are as far apart as it initially sounds. Right? There's a lot of continuity in both, but I think, as you say, you're very willing to take this as a complete revisit and reassemble moment. And sort of do all of that in one go. Whereas Chris is saying, well, let's get one set of variables in and then adapt and adjust from there. But I think in both cases, there's a running theme of there's something you do know very well and that you're using as the basis for doing that. But yeah, I think it's absolutely valid to say, well, yeah, new moment. I'll start this with a different look at an army or a different thing, and plenty of people do that. I think there's a bit of a red herring in our current game where I think we've been trained into thinking every time a shift like this happens, there's going to be some broken thing I can go and find and play. And I don't think that's what these current changes are doing in the game. I think it looks like it's leveling things out a lot more. So I think that age-old hopping around looking for some nonsense to exploit is maybe not actually going to benefit as much for people right now. Rob, what's your piece of advice, buddy, as we go to a start point?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of advice is just don't panic. Look at it piecemeal.
Yeah.
You know, if I went through my Facebook and Instagram and all those accounts and saw how many people that I have blocked on all the naysayers, just don't listen to that. At a time like this, just don't listen to it.
Yeah.
And have a look at the people looking at the positives. Have a read for yourself. Let yourself digest it and see what you think. It's not all doom and gloom. It's exciting. It's a game we play for fun, and it's a time for a fresh look and a fresh way of playing it.
Completely. I think that actually lines up with the little comment we've got from Sharuni in the chat. It says that, in my opinion, the most important aspect of every major shift is an open mind. Look for opportunities instead of problems.
100%.
I think that's very much the case. It's something Rob and I always do with Drukhari whenever a slate comes around for Drukhari. And again, the headline on Drukhari is, oh, you've got a nerf on your gun unit. But actually, as I say in the video that we'll put out this week, there's lots to be optimistic about in Drukhari. And actually, it's a great example of how an army actually doesn't even need to change much for there to be plenty to be excited about for an army in a given moment in time. So I think having an open mind there is great. And shout out to Sharuni, because Sharuni is bringing that open mind to our GSC Discord right now all the time and sticking up for the people who want to get stuck into that book and figure it out. So I've got a lot of respect for that. And I guess my other piece of advice with this is, something that's really important to do is to try and have and develop the ability to have your own thoughts on these moments and to interrogate and think through changes independently, not be swayed by currents and herds and noises that you get in these moments, because there's always a massive rush at left, right and centre. There's always people trying to shape opinion and sort of form very obvious conclusions from this, but actually it's very important to trial and error and test things and figure things out for yourself. And as Jack's already alluded to, that means knowing and going back to and looking at your toolkit in a detailed way. And I think it's really good to have one or two armies that you know really, really well for moments like this. And that's, whenever there's a shake-up, generally Drukhari is where I will start, because it's one of those armies where it's like, I know it really well and I know it inside out, and it's a range I can go and look at. And so as soon as I saw it's new missions, and the missions are quite dramatic changes, it's like, that's where I will go. You go back and I say, get one set of variables fixed and then play around with the rules and figure that out as well. Okay, let's take it forward. Let's think about how you can start to figure out new missions. Obviously, we've had a whole bunch of new missions drop. We talked through them and some of the changes on the show a couple of weeks ago, and shout out to Ed for hosting that one. But what would you guys say are the most important things you as a player can do to start getting a clear sense of how new missions work and how you can interact with them?
Guess the obvious one is reps. Just get some games in.
Reps.
Yeah.
Get down your club or get on TTS, play games and try it.
Play games, get them completely wrong, and then go from there.
I love those games. I love new mission games when it's complete anarchy and everyone gets something wrong and plays the rules wrong. It's so good.
Quickest way to learn.
Yeah. Make some mistakes. How about you boys?
I think this is something that applies, actually to the whole aspect of preparing. And it's something that a lot of people probably learned about in school. I'm going to bring it up now. It's knowing what kind of learner you are, right? Mm-hmm. So if you learn best by if you're as a visual learner, auditory learner, and I can't remember what the other one is, but a learn by doing person, right? A lot of people who do 40k, it's a very tactile game. They're a learn by doer kind of person. That's why a lot of people say reps. It's the most important way to get. I'm that kind of person. I can't really figure something out unless I do it myself. Yeah. But a lot of people are really good at picking stuff up just by reading it. So a lot of people can just read the missions and work that out, and they just know it. They know what the situation is off the top of their head, and they've got it all worked out, right? And there's a lot of content creators out there that are really good at that. A lot of like podcasters who are able to just provide a really eloquent opinion very quickly based on that, which if you're an auditory learner is very useful because you can listen to those people and then you can pick it up that way. So yeah, knowing the best way for you to learn in general, completely. I think it's very useful for making the most of what time you have. You know, if you prefer to, just reading it or listening to other people's opinions on YouTube or podcasts or whatever else it is, or just by, as we say, getting reps in, can be really good for prioritizing your time.
Absolutely. How about you, Chris?
I think it's just immersing yourself in it. If you're serious, right? If you're serious about going, right, I want to go to lots of events in the short term, I want to do well at these events, you're not going to be able to do that if you just, I played the mission once. When I go to the Saffron Sam events, it's missions that I haven't really played. And there's a huge difference in how I play those missions compared to the UKTC ones, which I put loads and loads of like reps in. And you just have to immerse yourself. Like as Jack says, everyone learns in different ways. Well, give yourself the biggest opportunity by playing practice games, going on TTS, talking about it with your friends, reading the cards, watching games online, like whatever. Just fully immerse yourself for that first couple of weeks, and you'll find that you actually have a huge advantage over those people who are still trying to work out what the mission is. Like if I went to an event this weekend, I've just, even with one game, I've got a big advantage over those players who haven't played it before. And we'll talk about Pariah specifically in shortly, but there are certain attributes or elements of Pariah which is now different, which you need to be taking into account in terms of how you're playing and your list building. And anything you can do gives you that head start early on, and this is a good opportunity for people. It is, a lot of people saying it's 10.5, right? It's got a whole new bunch of cards, whole new bunch of missions. If you are better prepared than your opponent, that is now a big advantage.
It's a huge advantage
compared to 2 weeks ago, where everyone was on a level playing field. You can now generate a big advantage, not only in your army, which actually is quite hard to do just because of the way balancing is going. But this time now is actually where you're going to see a bit more of a disparity, because some people are just playing whatever and just learning as they go, and other people have put the effort in, have built up their armies to adapt to this mission and kind of know what to expect.
So you heard it here, guys. Immerse yourselves. Go onto YouTube right now, watch all our videos, maybe twice, and really immerse yourself.
If you want to see two guys learning how to play Pariah Nexus literally live, then go and watch Chris and Ed's Friday Fight Night, and watch Ed's Friday Fight Night with Jack this weekend coming. This Friday coming. So I think we will be figuring this out very much in real time. So we can be with you on that journey as well. I'd say I'm going to speak up for those who don't immediately want to go swimming in the game for hours and hours and hours at a time as well, though. I think I count myself amongst it right now. I've been doing a lot, and I've been very up to speed with the game for ages. The last few weeks with other things in life, I've just had a little stop. Having stopped, I'm now like, stopping is bloody lovely, and I don't want to start again. And I think actually, if there's an expectation management dimension to this as well, which is you can be very relaxed about results for a little while now. You've got new stuff going on. There's new stuff coming in. There's a lot of unknowns. As Chris says, if you want to keep your level and keep your results, or even make progress and make headway, then you can put that work in, and it's going to really show in the next few months. Equally, you can also say these rules are going to be with us for quite a long time now. I've got time to figure this out. And if you're not in a rush, you can feel your way through that and just enjoy the ride as well. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, depending what kind of a player you are and where you're at. But it's very important that you have to manage your expectations, because as Chris says, you're not going to be able to just style your way out at the moment. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be more errors than normal. You are going to, if you just go in blind, find it harder. I'm so excited for like secondary cards I don't know exist popping up on TS. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I didn't know that was the thing, so I can't do anything about it right now. And it's all going to be that process of learning. But that itself can be a very fun fun journey as well. But you do need to have a grounded sense of what your ceiling is likely to be if you don't know what's going on. Shout out to Mark in the chat. It says, evening all. Says they like to look at objective maps, map out the areas they can score secondaries in, look for hotspots where multiple secondaries can be scored, and focus my gains around holding those locations. Now, yes, this is actually a brilliant piece of advice, because that was actually something that I think we all started to do and to figure out with the previous set of cards. You do eventually arrive at that point. My Nurglings are in the middle somewhere. I've got some jump pack lads in the corners. I've got a Rhino ready to push up this way. You start having all your different pieces. And I think one thing that's really useful is just to map out the cards, put them in front of you, look at them, get a sense of, well, what are they asking me to do? What does a deployment that sets me up to do these things are? And we'll be talking a little bit further down the line in this episode about the kinds of tools you might want for that, because we already have some thoughts. But only by reading the cards and knowing what they want you to do are you going to get a sense of what kinds of tools you might need to get to those places. And there's definitely a big shake-up this time. It's not the case that exactly the same set of things is going to work for you as before.
Well, you saw that, didn't you? With the more and more I played, the more often my opponent would be like, I'm deploying this unit here because it's 9 inches away from the corner to investigate signals. Like that was like such a common thing.
Yes.
And it's definitely going to be the case with Pariah.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those cases where, exactly as Mark says, we can fast track that if you want to. If you want to fast track, you literally think about now. It's not something I'd ever really done in a previous edition. But if I was literally sitting down now, I had the army I was going to take, had a board set up, and you're like, okay, let's go through these cards. Where do things need to be to do each of these things? Let's actually just dry run that before I actually play a game. I think that sounds like a really valuable way to sort of start mapping that out as well as thinking about the missions. Okay, fantastic. So, I think those are the main things on that. Now, let's talk about faction changes and balance changes. What are your key bits of advice for navigating shifts in the balance, and particularly adjustment of armies, adjustments of factions, and adjustments in the core rules for this moment in time? Because there's been a lot of change on that front. What do you think the key things for someone to bear in mind for this are? If we start with you, perhaps, Jack.
For me, I always start out. I basically, at this point, no one knows anything, right?
Yeah.
But so it's very difficult to make an educated decision on what you're going to prep for, right?
Yeah.
But then everyone else is kind of in the same boat. So it's kind of a level playing field. So for me, I just try and make the best all-rounder list that I can make.
Yeah.
And that sort of sees you through to a stage point. And then, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the line, when we know AdMech is the most broken army in the game, then we can say, okay, I need to be ready to play against into AdMech. But for now, I tend not to worry about like faction specific matchups and the meta shakeup. I just want to see what's good in my list. Or this is also a really good opportunity to be like, if there's stuff that you're not sure about, this is a good chance to test it out, because there's only so much of an optimization that you can make with no information realistically available. We're not all WTC players who play 8, 9, 10 games a week, right? So
thank God.
That's thank God. But so there's only so much that you can do. So I think it's a good opportunity to take the most to explore sections of your book. And this is, we talked a couple of weeks ago about faction specialists. This is where they kind of come out and really prove their value.
Yes.
I suppose, and then they can sort of work stuff out, really put roots down and figure out like what really works in a particular book.
Yeah, I'd completely agree. And I think essentially what you're building for is the missions and the cards, right? And that's what you're doing. As you say, there's going to be such a spread with a set of rule changes like we've just had. There's going to be tons of different armies in play, and players are herd animals. So until someone tells them what to do, and spoilers, this is a bad time to ask someone for what to do, because a lot of the best players in the world aren't telling you what to do right now, because they're all bunkered off and they don't want to tell you what they think is good. So actually, I don't think the answers are going to be out there in quite the same way that they often are. Which means, as Jack says, the most important thing to do is focus on yourself and what you in the armies that you understand well can do, and how you actually build them for the missions. And actually, it's a great time because you get so many chaotic matchups where stuff that's just not been built with each other in mind is going to be colliding in the short term. And I think that's really exciting. So we'll talk a little bit about obvious potential meta menaces and potential directions of the meta towards the end. But actually, I'd be loath to say that you can really know you're going to see that much of anything right now. Because I think the whole point of a slate like this is to inject excitement into a whole bunch of different armies. Any advice from you, Chris, on the sort of the navigating the balance and faction changes?
I kind of just look at this. As I mean, I alluded to earlier, obviously everyone goes, "Oh, my unit's gone up 5 points. I left. It must immediately drop it."
Yep.
What you want to do is probably find out is the unit still good?
Mhm.
Like maybe they've got the balance issue wrong. Take something like Eldar, like warp spiders. Guess what? Warp spiders still amazing. And like people, it's like, oh, it's got 10 points. Who cares? Like it still functionally does the thing really really well.
Yeah.
Obviously, Grey Knights, Dread Knights have gone up and stuff, but they still have a role and they still do the thing in the army. So don't just discount things that have gone up, which I think is a bit of a gut reaction
100%.
for a lot of people. Maybe you need to. So I use my Grey Knight list example. I had to think, what can I drop and gain stuff from? So for my list, I ended up dropping my third Dread Knight. So I've still got two, and I just put in 2 mission playing pieces because that's relevant to Pariah Nexus, which we'll obviously end up discussing.
Yeah.
But therefore, I've still got those Dread Knights in, because I still think they're value. So don't just get immediately dissuaded just because something's gone up in cost.
Completely.
And conversely, obviously, make sure if it's gone down, give it a go.
Yeah, revisit it and check it, right?
And just have another redo. Like when Grey Knights got like kind of changed earlier, all of a sudden you're reading through, you're like, oh, what is there? And you're like, oh, Brother Captain Stern, this is cool. This is a 90-point piece of get back up on the 2-up, which could be helpful.
Oh yeah.
And all that sort of thing. So I know Davey said about it on Bogwatch before, but just keep reading. Just keep reading your book. Like,
Yeah.
you never know. Like every time there's like the new rule change with devastating wounds is now counts as mortal wounds.
It's
And
huge.
suddenly you're like, oh, have I got a thing in my army that was giving me a feel no pain against mortal wounds? It was a complete waste of time. Is now suddenly relevant. And in the case of Grey Knights, it's Drago, who everyone thinks is amazing. I haven't been taking, but now there's another reason to take Drago on top of potential meta.
You're still going to fail every 6 charge you ever
I'm
roll.
still not going to take him. But if I did, he would have a 4-up for no pain his unit against mortal wounds.
Broadsides, for example, in Tau, right? That's suddenly
Exactly.
that's a rule that was basically irrelevant, now actually very relevant.
Yeah, I mean, it's very rare. I would, if I was offered something else, I would take it. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But I will
it's at
take those
least
Feel No
better
Pains.
than it was.
I mean, it's funny you say that, right? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of units that have had, because of core rule changes,
Yes.
they've had their function fundamentally changed, right?
Completely.
A good example of this is the Kroot Trail Shaper. So his thing,
Yes.
I had him in my list specifically because he could redeploy after the first turn roll. He can't do that anymore. So I've rotated him out in exchange for other stuff because now he doesn't do the role I want. Similarly,
Exactly
you might
that.
say the same thing for Warp Spiders and Eldar because their flicker jump is an advance, right?
Yeah.
So they can't. Is it not?
Nope.
I thought it was. I thought it's when they advance. My bad. But anyway, but
So smug.
Sure. Take a different unit as an example. Then I can't think of one off the top of my head. But
Well, I've got one for you, Jack. Warp Talons, right? Warp Talons take a big adjustment, 50-point rise, change to how they function. But is there anything in that CSM book that can do that nonsense? No. So they're still very valuable. It's a unit that is now not maybe spammable, but you're like, is there anything else that can kill, disappear, and yo-yo? No. So of course you want that unit. Of course you want one of those because that's an incredible threat to pose, but you're going to have to slightly change how you interact with the unit, right? Yeah, and I think that kind of integrated learning approach is really useful here, where it's like, if I'm moving away from something, why am I doing so? It's not just a feeling, not just my gut. I'm not just knee-jerking for the sake of it. As you say, so there's a unit. Does it do the job I wanted it to do now? No, not in this instance. Okay, I can change. I mean, it's the same with a faction. If you're going to jump off a faction, can it still do the things I want it to do? If it can't, it's a very reasonable time to change. But don't just change for the sake of it. Scourge, Rob, our boys, they get 10-point rise. You're like, is that still the most consistent gun unit we've got? Yeah, it is.
Still going to be running 15 of them.
Yeah, it's still going to be 15. And actually, in the wider game, the stuff that's been shelling them is less prevalent. So you're like, great.
Now you can run 30 of them for less than half the cost, less than double the cost.
I can, but half of them do only have splinter rifles. Or whatever
They are
Which is
ablative
AP,
wounds.
which is AP2 in Yunari.
It is AP2 Ordinary. Yeah, it's not nothing. Not nothing. Have you got anything to add on the sort of adjusting to the balance changes, Rob?
I completely agree with the others. It's I think you've covered almost everything. Just roll on with your army, and if you can define what you think the meta will be and cause your opponent's problems,
there's so much
don't
power
worry
in that.
about everything else.
Yeah.
And just if there's a Space Marine detachment, you're like, oh, I never took that because the strats are so expensive, I can't use it. Explore it.
Yeah.
Go have a look. Get your captains reducing your strategic ploy stratagems. Get your multiple archons on the board, creating a vect zone that covers the entire mid board, and just see what works.
Yeah, exactly that. As I say, I think, and that's where the core rules link up is really important. Spotting those opportunities, right? In that, obviously, with things like the Archon Vect, we'll see. I think that'd be subject to change, but at the moment, very, very powerful, and it's going to depend a little bit how it's ruled. Things like new pivot, there's obviously opportunities in that, and it's revisiting your different units. I mean, Demons players, I'm sure, are looking at all their monsters and what happens when I actually move this around and pivot the wings now, and what can I get out of that? And so there's practice to be done in that, and integrating core rules changes with units that you've already got, because that is a big change. So I think visualizing that is going to be really useful, and actually testing those things and trying that, just putting that on the board. Like Chris always likes to play with himself, right? Chris enjoys doing that.
All the time, mate.
I think adopting that approach of getting on TTS or getting your board out and just testing a couple of different things, moving them around, starting to visualize how those new things work is really useful and helps you to navigate. Right. Okay. So let's look ahead now to the kind of, I guess, the approach to Pariah Nexus itself, and also the approach to the meta. So if we think about Pariah Nexus, what fundamental changes to how armies play and to the tools they might want do we think this actual Pariah Nexus mission set brings? What kinds of things do you as players think we're going to need to see or want to see?
So a big one is that beforehand in Leviathan, in terms of secondaries, 3 out of 16 were actions.
Yeah.
Now it is 5 out of 18.
Yeah.
So it's about a 10% increase.
Yeah.
And so on top of that, some of those actions don't complete until the next turn.
Yes.
So when you're playing, you need to be high. And this happened to me on our game on Friday, was that I drew 2 cards at the same turn, which were both actions. One was containment, which is basically do an action 9 inches out of your deployment, or within 9 out of your deployment zone and within 9 inches of the edge of the board. Get 3 points.
Yeah.
Do it on the other side. Get 6 points. Right. Okay. Wow. That's going to be quite simple. But then there were other ones like sabotage, which is where you have to do it with on a terrain piece, and you have to survive. There's another one which is a bit like the old R&D rod, or whatever, but you have to survive. So there are certainly more, like you got cleanse, which is not a survive one, is it? But there are some where you have to survive now. So just having units which can score, which are primed just to do action, like action crap, action monkeys is the correct term.
The correct term that we completely made up at some point.
That's what you find in the dictionary.
All words are made up, Tom.
Yeah.
Not the Bible, Jack. Come on.
But yeah, you want more action monkeys, basically. Is the moral of that story.
Yeah, so action economy is important.
Action monkeys with fast-paced movements because of the other changes.
Fast-moving infantry.
Fast-moving infantry. Back once again. It's the fast-moving infantry. Okay. Nice. What changes do you see needing, Rob? What sorts of things do you want to adapt?
Yeah. The biggest one is making sure you can complete those cards, and fast-moving units are key to that. You can't advance anymore. Your objective from your deployment line, you're more than 7 inches, I think, on every mission to the central objectives. So you can't just walk an intercessor up to the middle and do cleanse turn 1 anymore. Mm-hmm. You can't do that. You need to have a plan for that. If you're going to go, I'm going to go fix, and they go, actually, I can't score any points till turn 3 if I do that. It's looking at the cards and making a plan.
So speed and reach and having a sense of where you need to go. Scout moves become very valuable in that context, right?
Or you could just go the complete opposite and say, I don't care, I'm just going to table my opponent.
I was about to offer that perspective, which is
Yeah.
that it still doesn't matter if you completely dismantle the other person and stop them from doing any of these things themselves. And actually, one thing I'm always interested in a moment like this is that balance between the clevery, scory builds and the brute force. And with some of the deployments, the question mark here is: does brute force have a leg up in some of these? Because it's closer, it can get involved much quicker. And is there a very high pressure way of playing that completely disrupts the attempt to play the cards that's also very valid? So I think have a sense of which direction you want to go and whether the army you play suits it. I mean, let's say you're a World Leaders player, right? You're like, am I going to take a bunch more utility chaff units, or am I going to focus on maximum chaos and disruption and smashing the opponent up and think about how I do that? And so I think that's one where, again, there's a fixed game probably available for some armies that want to be that kind of army as well. There may even be secret mission playing. Now, I'm not going to pretend to know this inside out yet, but secret missions might offer you a sort of, I'm going to body you for a couple of turns and worry about the secret mission at the end, and that's just going to make up a deficit as well. So yeah, I think that's definitely good advice. What do you think, Jack? Anything else to
add? Yeah, I think something that's really important to think about is, particularly with primary, is knowing the sort of tempo that the primary mission sort of wants you to play. So a good example of this is supply drop, right? We all know supply drop has a massive advantage if you go second, because you can jump on the objective at the end of the game. And in the previous, in Leviathan, Purge the Foe had a massive advantage, because if you went second as well, because you would get the bonus points on turn 1 up to 8 for getting a kill more on turn 1. Great. That's gone away now, so that's reduced the requirement for the early aggression on Purge the Foe. Opposite end of the spectrum, Scorched Earth. You can now burn objectives turn 1 on Scorched Earth. Yes. So if you play very aggressively on Scorched Earth, that can be a big benefit to you. So I think knowing what, I play Linchpin, so I know we're both going to max primary. I don't know if that's the case. I'm just giving an example. This is the high primary scoring mission. This is the one where if you go first, you have an advantage. This is the one if you go second, you have an advantage. This is the one if you have, this is the one that Tau are really good at. This is the one that Eldar are really good at. This is the one, that sort of thing. Being prepped in that sort of sense can be very valuable for preparing a game plan in deployment, because you don't have to think about it after the fact.
Completely. No, this is really smart, and this is actually something. Again, this is something like learning where to position your units to score the cards. This is stuff that we'd arrived at the first year of the edition having figured out, but actually now you're like, I know there's going to be these things out there, so let's go and look for them and find them and figure them out. So I think really smart.
Jack's specific example of Linchpin there, that was the one Adam and I played on Friday. And Linchpin is where you get, if you hold your home field objective, you get 3 for that, and then 5 for any of the others you hold. And if you don't hold it, you just get 3 for any you hold in no man's land. Now, most of us generally like to think our home field's reasonably secure, but actually, if you start doing the maths on it, if you hold your home field and another, which, let's face it, quite often a lot of us settle for, that's only scoring you 32 primary points. And so then, I played into Eldar, and Ed did a very good job of not letting me dominate the primary, which I should have been doing with the Grey Knights into Eldar in all reality. But it was Dawn of War, 3 across the middle, and I ended up on 32 primary points. And that's losing 18 points is huge, which means that anytime you can shut down your opponent on primary or Linchpin, super important. Especially if you've got a shot at dropping their backfield, and suddenly their secure 8 becomes a 3. That's incredibly important. But it also means that if you want to be playing for high points or for anything like that, on that mission you need to be holding 2 in no man's land. So on diagonals and that sort of thing. Well, there's no diagonal anymore, but you know what I mean. You have to hold the middle, which not many people like to do, really. So that mission. So then you're thinking, right, well, I'm only getting 32 here. Shit, is it just going to come down to cards? Are we both playing passively? And 32 is what I'm going to get. It makes any time you can generate a 5-point swing on that mission is going to be huge. But it's about going into that, because there are some missions we used to play where, like Priority Targets, was it Priority Targets? We were like, well, we're just going to score 50. Like, you know, as long as we just play the game
Such a
and
drawy
we're not an
mission.
idiot, we're probably
Yeah.
just going to score 45 or 50 points. And now suddenly I'm scraping for a 32, and that completely changes the dynamic of the game. So, absolutely, it's a really good point. You need to be just mathsing out very roughly. So, I guess my point is know what your mission pack is. Like when UKTC dropped the things which I think a lot of people are saying is going to be dropped on Friday, read that mission pack and look at the maps and go, right, what do we think an average score here is going to be, and how can I try and build an advantage? And that will give you an advantage when it comes to Sheffield and Mid-Jai or whatever.
Yeah, I
very
think to add on to that, like looking at a mission, there's an obvious way of looking at it, but when you were talking about that mission, I forgot about it. And when you said it, I was like, my game plan isn't to hold primary; it's to get that home field objective.
Yeah.
There's more than one way to play these games now. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting about the pack is it's a different set of puzzles, and that's we've needed that. We've been due that for a little while. So I think it's, but as you say, I think if you consciously start thinking about each mission as a puzzle to solve, as something to look at and think about what it wants, what the risks are, what the averages are, what different types of game plans are likely to produce on those missions. That gives you a very clear sense of that the basics of how you're going to start thinking about the way different armies are going to interact with each other on these boards. Which, if you have some sense of that before you even start playing games, that puts you in a delightful spot. That's a really, really nice way of thinking about things. Okay, wonderful. I'm now going to briefly let Chris tell you how to get valuable practice, because Chris loves doing this. This is something Chris always likes to talk about. If someone wants to actually practice effectively in a new meta situation, Chris, what does good practice look like?
I think it's just breaking it down into like the absolute basics and don't take anything for granted.
Yep.
It's like I mean, I certainly on Friday was like, it's just new cards, it'll be fine. And then I'm like, I don't know what this does. I don't know what this does. What's the rule of the mission again, and that sort of thing. So just having it kind of like all written out is really important, and just working through it step by step, making no assumptions. And that's the same with the rules as well. Obviously, we're talking about Pariah, but what does this actually look like when my opponent can pivot his falcon for free over and over? And shit, actually, you can go quite far now compared to, and that's a whole new thing. Like, we used to just measure out distances and how far can a vehicle go, and now they can probably go, especially if they're on a circular base, they're going quite a bit further than
get those Harleys back out, mate.
Oh god, I'm not quite sure enough.
You don't think it does enough?
I'm not sure.
Coward.
I played one game. I played a couple.
He
of
did.
games.
He did. You actually have tried. I'll give you that.
Tried, yeah.
Maybe pivots what they needed, mate.
Fake Eldar main.
But yeah, it's just about going back to basics. And then, and as we always allude to, I do like to play it myself. And you know what? Although it is a bit weird being just in a silent mind space for like 3 hours, like you do kind of, it's a weird zone out where you're like, literally nothing's been said in this room, but my brain's been like chat. But actually just moving your models around, reading the cards, and having that okay time to work things out. Like when I'm playing Rob live on stream, I am trying to play a good game. I'm also trying not to take forever because the streamer watching. I'm also trying not to take forever because for Ed, right? But when I'm here on my own, I can be like, well, I could do this, or I could, and just doing it, and if I do this, I'll do it, and like just getting to move the pieces around. It's really helpful, and you don't have that guilty feeling of I'm also taking my opponent's time. And then I guess the other way is the exact opposite of that, which is collaborative play. Right, I've drawn this card. Right, what do you think the best way of me scoring this card is? How do you think in general our armies would score this card if we were to draw it now? Just talking through them, coming up with those ideas. I remember, I can't remember what card it was, but it was. So we played Adapt or Die as one of the mission rules, which is basically if you draw, when you draw your secondary cards, you can go for you can twice a battle, you can get a second one. And just put one back into the pile. But like I'm reading it out loud, and as you're reading it, you're processing it, right? And you're talking to your partner. So I'm like, right, Okay, well, actually, the way this is worded is you draw your first one, you then have to decide, do I want to use my go now to draw the second one and choose whether I'm gonna discard one of these, or am I okay? Am I keeping this card? So I guarantee you in events, lots of people are just going to draw 2 cards and go, I don't really like this one. I'm going to redraw a second one now and choose from it. But actually, that's not how it's worded at all, and that just gives you massive advantage if you do it like that. So, just talking out loud with your partner and explaining what you're thinking and that sort of thing. And as we always say, remove the ego from the game. Like, who the fuck cares who wins a practice game? Like, it really pisses me off.
I just think no ego
games
in the new meta, really, if you can avoid it. It's not useful. Whatever idea you have of where you think you're at, you've just reset. So there's no point worrying about it. It's just
especially in team, right?
Especially with your own buddies, yeah.
Yeah, we're working as 6++ to try and be the best individual players we can, but also as good a team as we can. And that's not by me keeping all of my closely guarded secrets to my chest. It's about us discussing and working things out as a team.
Absolutely.
So we can benefit from it from events. And a lot of people here play with friends and go to tournaments and that sort of thing. And sure, some people listening to this will be those who are playing once a month and their one sole aim in life is to dick over their best mate on a monthly basis. And in which case, yeah, fair enough. But in general, for those who are trying to work together to become better players and make the most of that that collaborative aspect.
Yeah, completely. See, I told you we get good value from that. All right. So just before we get towards the end of this segment, I think we've mostly given general advice here, but I think as observers, I am curious what you guys think the kinds of things we are likely to be seeing are. If we're zooming out to the level of armies and factions and sorts of builds that might work or might have got a bit of a juicing up in this current set of rules, what kinds of things do you anticipate us seeing? Start with you, Rob. Oh, sorry, no, Jack, you go. You go, Jack.
I think Admech is going to come back in a big way.
Okay.
I played against Admech and got absolutely destroyed. And I ended up, out of curiosity, ended up doing some math. Some of those units have more than doubled their damage output in terms of average damage that they do. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So I really think Admech, Admech are going to come back in a big way. I'll just give a three armies. I think it'd be
go for it.
Second one I think is Thousand Suns.
Yeah,
I think they've taken a couple of hits in terms of their usability. I think they're a lot more fiddly to use than they were before.
Yeah,
but I still think they can do everything that they want to do.
They absolutely can.
So I think once people kind of work that out and maybe see a couple of top lists, they're gonna be hitting Thousand Suns a lot. I know when we went to the teams event, the ITT, when our team played against Thousand Suns every single round. So I think they're only going to get at least as popular as that.
Because they're in that position of a faction that a lot of people were already conscious they were good and building on that. And I don't think there's any reason to think that changes. That's one of those continuity cases. I'd put maybe Blood Angels in that bracket as well, where it's it's already good. It'll keep being good. What was your third pick, sir?
I would say Sisters.
Interesting. Okay, nice.
Because I think a lot of people, the hype kind of died down for Sisters. There were lots of rumors about Sisters being giga broken, right?
Yeah.
And then they got very hefty points increases, and the hype has kind of died down on them. But I think once people actually see what that faction can do, and see how, and not just it can do XYZ thing. It's I'm going to do this every single time, and it's never going to fail because Miracle Dice.
Yes.
And it's going to be 28 inches of movement without rolling a dice and stuff like that.
My parallel is actually Votan when that dropped, and that got slapped with an absolute bodying on release, and everyone was like, oh. And it wasn't ever quite the be-all and end-all, but it was still flipping nuts because even once it had been adjusted, what it had been given was completely insane. Absolutely crazy, the things it could do.
So I think that one might be a bit of a slow starter, but I definitely think it's going to crush some fools if they don't respect it. So I'll definitely be watching out for that one as well.
Cool. Any meta tips from you, Rob?
I think demons are coming.
It's absolutely demons are absolutely coming in a big way.
They just survive on objectives in the midboard. They apply pressure. They've got cheaper and they've got better. I feel like they're already almost there. Pre all these changes,
and they're an uppy downy 3-inch deep strikey teleporty better melee delivery from reserves than anything else.
Yeah.
They've got
And
an incredible toolkit.
yeah, they're always in their aura now, basically.
And the only thing that was actually locking that to any one part of the board is gone. So, but Be'lakor was the only reason that was only focused in particular places. The ability to focus that power in multiple places at once is a crazy change. I think also Chaos players are a funny bunch. They always tend to flock in particular directions at a given moment. And if you're looking at it like T-Sun's basically the same, so I think the people that like it will keep doing it, but I don't know if people are going to flock to that. It's also fiddly. CSM got a nerf, so people maybe flock away a bit. And then the rest, there's nothing too exciting. Demons is the Chaos Army right now that's got that real energy around it. And I think exactly like in Ninth when they got the book and a bunch of changes, I think we'll see a real spike for them.
They will get you now. They will charge you.
They will get you really bad.
It's going to happen.
You will find out that actually when they do hit you, it is really bad. And also being jammed and trapped up by an army of stuff that doesn't care whether you've got AP at all is actually a really scary situation to be in a game, and that also heals if you don't kill it. Is not good. It's very, very scary. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be excited there. What about you, Chris? Any top tips?
Yeah, I mean, the one that sprung to mind for me was Demons, just because like loads of people have Demons Army as well, and
it's not a hard one to collect actually. And few big monsters, few little guys.
Exactly, and they've got they've had enough of a rules change that people are excited about it.
That's the kind of thing.
I think potentially armies like Admech, like they might well really be a very strong army. Who knows? But do enough people own that army? Obviously, people own it from when they were broken. But then, so for me, I have a lot of stuff for Admech. Still don't have quite the right stuff to necessarily dive into that direction. So there might well be one of those armies that does really well, but you don't necessarily run into it. Grey Knights are still really strong. They're
really good. I think there'll be a continuity one, I think, in not the same sort of way.
Yeah,
it's not that exciting, I think, now for someone to pick up if they haven't already, but you can definitely keep doing really well with it.
Yeah, I think they're just a strong army who, as long as they can get enough, I don't necessarily know their blow your opponent away method of play is going to work anymore.
No, for sure.
Like those massive vehicle lists have gone.
I don't think they work.
They've gone up like 135, 150 points. So actually now it's kind of like, wow. And then you just don't have any mission play. And I alluded to like the whole scoring your cards thing. Like, that army doesn't do it. Like, it genuinely doesn't do it. But you go more MSU and you can't kill much. But if you can lock down primary and just score your cards consistently, then you're just doing a job, aren't you? So I think Grey Knights is still going to be up there. I mean, I think people start to... I'll be very interested to see if people move away from 18 Wraiths and...
Necrons.
Is that still going to be a thing?
Is that still a thing or not?
I genuinely don't know. Orcs have obviously... as we've said a few times, changes just automatically dissuade people.
Yeah.
So, orcs have obviously taken some hits, and now people can be like, actually, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Or are there still going to be good builds of people? And I think it is interesting. So basically, I don't know.
Neither do I, mate. But we're taking the pundits role here, and we're just meaningless speculation. I wanted to shout out Bleak Blue, who's just become a member in the chat. Thank you so much, Bleak Blue. That's amazing. Yeah, I think it is wonderful. Good to have another member in there. I think that takes us to 26. Disney Heights of 26. We're on the march, boys. Only been a few months.
on the reverse point, what do you think you're just not going to see anymore?
That's a great question.
What do you think is just totally dropped from the meta?
What is going to evaporate? I think for the next 2 months, Eldar. I don't think you're going to see Eldar much. I think it's taken some hits, and I think the sorts of people from whom people would usually take their lead are not going to be out and about showing them how that works right now. But maybe some Phoenix Lord stuff. But I think Eldar was already on the down, so I think we're going to see less of it because we were already seeing a lot less of it, and I think it's going to continue to be. How about you guys?
Hypercrypt Necrons, I think.
Hypercrypt, yeah.
A lot less of that. They can't deep strike their Catan anywhere they want anymore, and that was what was keeping them in there.
I'll tell you what else we'll see less of is Kroot.
Sorry.
They caught so many strays, it's not even funny.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Just as a I think for Eldar, I think their biggest count against them is that the army has changed so little because the good stuff that they keep getting nerfed is just like, well, it's just still good. So you just don't change your army at all.
I think it's more from a sort of meta standpoint of it doesn't.
I think,
although they will be good at the new missions. To be fair, I think they will score
I think
well.
innovation gets stifled for that faction because people get really bored of it because it just doesn't.
That's exactly it. I think the top
changes.
players have sort of lost interest in a lot of ways, and the ones that are doing it are not sharing right now. So
I think there's a couple that are really interesting to talk about. I think Green Tide is sort of
I think Green Tide's in big trouble.
Killed before it even was born.
Yeah,
really. So I think
it was a very silly build.
Yeah.
Rob Kimpton's obviously also disappearing from the game because he's dropped out. Green Tide got hit hard. And then let's see what else. I think Bully Boys probably still works. Ironstorm has been annihilated, right? Yeah.
I think Ironstorm is just gone. I don't see Marine players choosing to put time into Ironstorm. There's so many other good detachments and sub factions basically that you can run for Marines. I just don't see anyone running the Ironstorm build for them anymore.
I think melee Marines will be where it's at right at the moment in the short term. I think that's going to be.
Do you think Knights are going to be experimented with now? Is that because obviously they've got the rule where they can just walk through the terrain?
I think Canis Rex will be out and about, won't he?
Yeah,
Canis Rex is a goddamn monster.
He's a monster, and now he can just walk out that back ruin and start blasting.
I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a vehicle, but he's also a monster. Because that free
a person could be two things.
You have a vehicle and a monster inside you. The ability to reduce the cost of a stratagem by 1 is so good for him. Just stuff like, I mean, the CP reroll is where you would see it most because he was like an ally option.
Yeah.
But rotating his iron shields for free, doing heroic interventions for free, just ruining people's days on so many levels is it's just insane.
I immediately went and built a Grey Knights list with just him and like no Dread Knights. So him and Foster, and I was like,
I was going to message you and say try it because why not? I think absolutely
beware the Canis Rex.
I think Canis Rex is a plugin that works in so many armies. Yeah.
I think that I think Big Knights kind of are going to. I think Imperial Knights will have play more than they did, but I don't think they're going to become a real meta terror.
Yeah,
Chaos Knights, on the other hand, I think have got a lot of potential. I think one Big Knight Chaos Knights could be really scary.
Yeah,
like the ones that give I can't remember. Is it a Rampager that gives advance and charge?
Yeah, Rampager can advance and charge once per game and hits like a freight train.
That one's quite tasty. And the ability to essentially stop people from doing mission actions by being in combat is really powerful for them because it's a large model, lots of OC. They cause battle shock around them, and most of them are fairly good in combat. So if they just sit on a point, it's like, well, there's going to be a huge like area around them that you're just not going to be able to score points in until you clear them out of. So if it's, I think it's 10 War Dogs you get and one Big Knight, I think, or 11. I can't quite remember. But I think that has a real potential to be a list that just ruins people's days.
Completely.
So
I think on a similar note, I mean, Tyranids, right? as well. I think Tyranids have got some nice buffs. I think Tyranids have had a pretty large player base the whole way through this edition, despite being really bad for a lot of it. And I think the rules changes they got are those kinds of wild possibility opening changes that get people massively excited. Yeah. And again, they're an army that plays mission well, disrupts mission well, and that should suit this pack. I think it really should. In fact, it's an army that can make it really hard for the opponent to score whilst also scoring for fun.
Where do you think Chaos Space Marines are going to sit? I'm really torn on them.
It's on a knife edge. My instinct going into it was that this set of changes is not nice for them, but I think what CSM players will now do is revert to their traditional game plan of I'm going to utterly destroy you and we will see what happens if I just run you over. And I think there's some builds in that army to do that. I don't think it's got quite the same mass output that it had because it has lost 100 and something points off some of the lists. but I think it's an army that should be able to go for the throat very aggressively on some of these missions. And it's just seeing where that sits. It's got predators. I don't know, and I think because it took a hit, I think the excitement will be elsewhere.
They also have demolishers, and they're really nasty too.
They do. I think they've got really good guns, and they still have some premier melee units. And I think there's still quite a lot to explore with it. Because the weird, I mean, we had the data on this recently. Like everyone's playing Renegade Raiders, it's just demonstrably not that great. Like there's a whole bunch of limitations to what it can do. You're sort of settling for bullying some matchups and losing others, and that's very much the data it's had. And it's rare for it to get all the way to the end, but it has done it a few times. And I think
it's a very big finesse faction. I think that one
exactly. It's quite elfy in some ways.
I think you need a lot of skill and like knowledge about movement to get the most out of that detachment.
Yeah. And I think the changes to the core strats actually does help some of the others, because some of the others have strats they would love to use for free that they now can. And that's interesting to think about as well. And then the other trend, the regrettable trend, is that gradually people are heading back in a cultisty direction.
Yay!
And we've had Chaos Cults has been doing very well the last couple of weeks, which is interesting. And so I think the accursed type builds definitely seem to be slipping back into play as well. And I think those are good at bodying primary, right? I
can't remember the name of it, the Iron Warriors detachment.
Oh yeah,
I think that gets quite good when you start putting multiple Chaos Lords in to do free strats.
Yes,
because their strats are like they're okay, but if they're free, it's like that's really good. Like So I think that actually has a lot more potential. Again, I don't think it's going to be a top pick, but I think
I don't think it does. But I think there's enthusiasm, right? People like the book. I know I do. Like, I'm enjoying it. I'm not going to stop playing it just because it's taken some hits, right? I think it's enjoyable.
Yeah. What I mean by that is that I think even the kind of lower tier detachments have been pushed up, so it's very much.
I completely agree.
It's very compressed now for what is the go-to detachment. I think for Chaos Space Marines, which is for me is why I find it hard to place them. In terms of how good they'll be.
It's almost as if you've watched the Chaos Data Slate React that I've literally recorded before this show, Jack, because that's exactly from an internal balance standpoint. I think this is actually a great slate for CSM in a lot of ways. It doesn't feel good, but I think actually the internal balance is way better coming off the back of these changes than it was before, where there were literally two detachments that you were like, that's what I want to slam.
I have one more faction to ask you about.
Okay.
Custodes.
Well, I know our very own Aaron is in my DMs about Custodes, and he doesn't do it lightly. I think the general perception is they're definitely better now. And the devs wounds change is enormous for them. That's absolutely enormous. And I think they have a few units of Venatari look very spicy. That's a very nice one. And they, again, are an army that can say, I am going to run at you and shut you down and stop you doing your clever things on the primary, right? So it'd be interesting to see whether it's enough.
They hit like trucks now, right?
They really do.
Like the Golden Host being able to, I think it's Golden Host Roll, I think that's what it's called. But it gives you the critical 5s in every round of combat if you want it. That is absolutely insane. Critical 5s is so good.
Another army that the free strats thing is massive, just massive. Just opens up some crazy stuff. And again, a more diverse meta, I think, gives them more of a chance as well, because as you know, shooty gun lines is going away a bit. The ones that were just lifting everybody, that helps them. I think that's a big positive for them.
Yeah. I think the only sort of gunline armies you're going to see like super common in the meta will be Admech, Tau,
because they have to be.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think some of the Chaos Space Marine detachments lend themselves to be very shooty.
Yeah,
but I think in terms of like if your game plan is to shoot the opponent off, that's basically it.
Yeah,
like in terms of common stuff you're going to see like a lot of times in an event, you know, like.
Yeah, completely. It's exciting. There's tons of stuff in play. It's very hard to call. I'm really excited to seeing what comes up next. It's actually always the most interesting bit of a meta when you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. Right, okay. And I agree, Gordon Chung. Raiders, too much happens off objectives. Your opponent isn't on objectives all the time. Also, it would be lovely to have other kinds of counterplay in an army. in general. That's just I'm a pack-bound devotee because I only started playing it 3 weeks ago, so what do I know? Right, we're going to read out our one podcast question. If you in the chat want to shoot another podcast question or two in, do feel free to do so. You can, of course, super chat. We welcome it, and then we're going to go to bed. So the question from Bloodrender asks, what unit has you most excited to try in this new world? What is the unit you can't wait to use, boys?
So for me, not a lot has changed in the Tau Codex, so I'm not gonna worry about the Tau Codex for now because it's like super minor optimizations for me.
Yeah,
so that's not interesting. But looking at the Genestealer Codex, the unit that's got me the most interested in is Acolytes with auto pistols, which are the combat ones.
Yeah, the combat ones.
Those units are really cool because they're damage free
really
and they have a lot of stuff that buffs them up. Xenocreep Congregation makes them really strong. They're really good in with a Biophagus in Biocentic
Brutes. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, that's it. All these detachment names, I'm losing my mind. And then they're also solid coming out of transports, so you can use them in Outlander Claw. They're really good coming out of Deep Strike. You can give them the +2 to charge in Host of Ascension. There's like so many different ways to play them, and there's all these different characters you can chop in and chop and change with them. There's so many different ways to play them. I think they're really an interesting unit that I always end up putting them in my GSC list just because I'm like, well, there's something they can do for me, and there's something that I can sort of tailor them towards, which I really like.
I agree. I think the changes for them are really exciting. It's nice. They're a unit that has a more obvious role now, and is at a price point that feels more palatable as well. So that's a very cool one. How about you, Chris?
I mean, obviously, in the moment I'm playing Grey Knights, and nothing's really changed. It's like the way the points changes have gone. It's basically you lose a unit and you gain 2/3 of a unit, and that 2/3 of a unit often turns out to be an assassin. So I guess I'm excited to try the Colexis and the Eversaw. It's really boring because they've not changed in any way at all. But I put the Collectors in my list on the Friday. It's actually got quite an interesting data sheet. It's got a mini Shadows of the Warp, which you can throw out within 6 inches, which could be good for that primary aspect. It's very good into Psychers, can absolutely precision out Psychers for fun. It's anti-Psyker and Deathwind, 2-up and Deathwind in combat. And are we going to see lots of Psychers in the meta? Maybe, I don't know. Eversaw, cheap action monkey.
I've played against the Eversaw before, and it's great. It's it has always actually been great.
Only 75 points as well. And
it's bonkers.
In a lot of Grey Knights lists where you are dropping a 120, 130 point unit and you've got those 50 points kind of you've got, you're basically generating 75, 85 points spare. Well, that is one of those assassins. So
absolutely.
I guess that's something for Imperial.
This is amazing because Rob has just, for those who didn't know, Rob disappeared for a little bit. He's now back, and what he's going to do is he's going to literally steal my answer to this question. Are we ready? Rob, what is a unit you are excited to use in Pariah Nexus? You're muted, Rob.
Hellions. No, not really. The Archon.
Yes.
The Archon.
Correct. There we go.
Running at people, punching them in the face, and letting them not use their nice strats.
It's so fun, isn't it?
Amazing.
It's so fun. He's going to be a real pest. Drakari. I mean, I want to shout out Drakari. I'm not sure you're going to see like a ton more of them, but they are still very relevant. And I think this pack will suit them. I think the meta changes really suit them. And if you miscount your CP usage into Drakari at the moment, you are going to have your face pulled off. And that's the way they should be.
Can't wait to pay 2 CP for fucking mists.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that, buddy. It's so good. Really good.
It's only the Warlord that does that, right?
It is supposed to only be the Warlord that do that, and I suspect in the long run that's how it's going to be ruled. Yeah, there is an ongoing read as written, read as intended argument, which I'm just going to let happen.
Yeah, right now it's every Archon, but
yeah.
But when I looked at it, I'm like, the obvious intention is it to mirror the Eldar one, where if he's your Warlord, you get a CP.
That's exactly
what it is. Your Warlord gets more CP.
I think that's exactly how it will be adjusted. Yeah. And I think some events are already ruling it that way. But I will certainly check, because if I can have 3 Archons with effect, I'm going to do it. What's the unit I'm excited to run? We've just talked about Archons, so I'll take it. What's the CSM one? Fabius Bile. I like Fabius Bile. I've been seeing quite a lot of Fabius Bile bricks doing the rounds. The Fabius Bile brick of Chosen is a very funny brick of Chosen. It's tougher, it's stronger, and he's really annoying. And I'm excited to try that as a jam piece in the new pack, I think.
Run me through. What does he do? I've never seen.
It makes them strength and toughness 5. And then he himself is a very nice, punchy little damage 3 combat guy. He's got a blanket save once or twice a game, and also he's got that get back up when he dies. So he's just a pain in the arse, really. And he's a cheap plugin for that unit. I mean, the other thing that unit is a brick of 10 Chosen, which is, it's just a good unit.
Can you attach him to Possessed?
No, you can't.
Thank God.
Can you imagine?
T7 running around.
Oh my God, I forgot a unit as well. I'm stealing 2 units. I'm sorry. The Jaegers, the Votan Jaegers, and they're an army that should have a shout out, as they will have a little explosion of use again, because being able to forward deploy and get involved is good. And there's going to be some really punishing Votan Alpha strikes happening whilst people adapt to this as well.
It really speaks volumes to how much of a drought Votan players are living in when they're like, an 80-point infiltrator. Yes! Oh, I'm so excited. It's reinvigorated my need for this army.
It's the most exciting thing to happen to that army in this edition, so that's where we're at. Other than being brought back to life very briefly as well. Cool. All right, and then Daniel Hammond in the chat asks, what Necron dynasty will see more play now?
I think the Awakened Dynasty is, I think that's exactly right, super slept on at the moment.
Yep.
I think it was slept on in the sense that it was good but outshined by Canoptek Court.
Yep.
Now I think there's a very real reason to run it. So I want to see more lists like that. I think the getting units back up. What's his name? Cesaras getting back up, super strong. The 4+ Feel No Pain enhancement is really, really strong on something like a Catacomb Command Barge or a Scorpec Lord. Really strong enhancements.
Tools. Yeah,
the +1 strength and AP stratagem, really good. There's just so much stuff that attachment can do that is just really strong. Just generally good things to have. So I think, that one has a lot of play. I think.
I agree. I think the melee one also, we should see at least some use. I like it. The Annihilation Legion or whatever it is. James Marsden's been doing well with it. I think it looks good, and it's, again, we're in that creative moment where it's like, well, it'll be tried now, and it might like these new boards a little bit. We'll see. Gordon Chung says he's painting Possessed and Jaegers right now. That's a good boy. Those are both good things to be painting. Well done. That's what we want. Possessed, I do. Yeah, I think, again, as I say, taking it back to the CSM thing, I think one thing that hasn't really been tried enough yet is hitting the yes button on Possessed, and that is definitely, they are still cheap for what they are. 30 Possessed sets you back 750 points. That's a lot of points left for other stuff, whilst your opponent has to deal with 30 Possessed, which is pretty interesting.
What?
Yeah.
Possessed at 25 points a model. You haven't lost.
They are, yes. They are cheaper than Warp Talons. Absolutely. That's not been looked at yet, and that to me is terrifying.
Cries in aberrance.
Yeah.
Jesus
let's not even
Christ.
talk. Yeah. Well, actually, you and I are going to start fixing up GSC next week. That's what we're going to do. The first thing you do is beat me with them in this league, and then we'll start figuring them out.
Not if you switch to Drukari.
Drukari don't like GSC, mate. I think you'd have liked Speedwire a lot less. I think that
Unbelievable.
Oh dear. Right. I think that's us done for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you all again in the very near future. Bye-bye.